Hi, I'm Jackie Benestante from the Autism Society of Texas. I'm the deputy director, and I also have a child who just finished middle school recently. Today, we're going to talk to you about what you can do for preparing for middle school, and I'm joined here by Miss Lauren Crow, and she is a special ed certified teacher and works with middle schoolers with autism. Ms. Crow, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I work in the middle school setting, primarily with kiddos with autism, but with a variety of struggles with executive functioning or social and emotional skills. And I directly support them in both my classroom, but also in the gen ed setting as well.
Great, thanks. And we just wanted to let you all know, we actually had planned this topic well before the coronavirus situation, and we did consider, should we be doing this or not? But ultimately, we hope that everybody here with a fifth grader has a kiddo going to middle school in the fall, and we want you to be ready. And so we will address what you can do now, what you can do in the future, what to expect with everything that's going on right now. And so we'll give you the best information we can in what's really an unknown situation. There's plenty you can do to kind of get ready for the big transition, and we'll kind of walk you through that in a chronological order. So I'm going to start with what you can do now this spring. So right now, it's obviously not realistic to tour the school this year. So what we would suggest is, and as much as this is allowed, stay outside, maybe go to the school. If you're taking walks or if there's a sports, either a track or a basketball court that you can use, practice your social distancing, go up to the school, walk around, do some exercise, kind of familiarize yourself with it. Also kind of check out where's the front main doors, where's the drop-off area going to be, is there a carpool circle and how does that work? So there's a lot of things you can do just right now to get yourself familiar with the campus. The other thing we would recommend is check the school's website. So look at the website, look at their Facebook pages, see if they have a school newsletter. Sometimes there'll be like a PTA or a school newsletter, and sometimes the kids in the journalism department will do a school newsletter. And so if you look at all of those things, you'll kind of get an idea of what school life is like what clubs and activities are there. Are there, does the band have a Facebook page? Is there photos on Twitter? There's usually a lot of things that you can find out just from poking around school websites that you could show your kids and share with them, just to have them kind of get a good idea of student life.
And I'm going to talk a little bit about what your transition ARD process is going to look like. So this year, while your kiddo is still in fifth grade, you should be having some sort of transition ARD, which generally happens before the school year is over. And your elementary school case manager will be there, as well as potentially your middle school case manager. Sometimes it's the department chair, but somebody from the SPED department should be there. It's generally pretty short, not like an annual would be. You're just reviewing any changes that may need to happen for the middle school setting. So some of your accommodations for your student might change to make sure they fit what happens in middle school. So if there's accommodation for what happens in recess, but that doesn't happen in middle school, so that may look different. Before having this ARD, it's a good idea to have your students start writing down questions that they may have about what middle school is like, what it will look like, some system, and then they can be present during that transition ARD. If this year it ends up being online, then have them with you online so that they can ask their questions. That's also a good time for them to meet somebody from their new school, so that on the first day they at least have one familiar face that they know. You can also prepare some questions beforehand. I always recommend to have a meeting before your ARD so that you and your case manager can talk out any questions or concerns you may have before the meeting itself happens, so that you guys have a curated list of questions that you know you need to ask the middle school personnel. The child doesn't have to be there for the whole meeting, but I would definitely recommend that the child is there for part of the meeting. And if your kiddo has any big sensory issues, if you know that the cafeteria is going to be a struggle, then making sure that that's a good time to ask those questions. First day of school, what is lunch going to look like? Where are they going to go? And if there needs to be some sort of accommodation embedded in your child's IEP, then that's a good time to make sure that that's in there. And it's also helpful for the case manager to know that that's something that they're going to need to support the child in. Even if it doesn't need to necessarily be an accommodation, they know that it's on their radar. So making sure that your middle school personnel go through the accommodations so that they fit the middle school model is really important. And then some students won't have a class with their case manager depending on what their schedule ends up looking like. So having a meeting time, knowing that they're going to meet face-to-face with their case manager every so often, once a week or once every other week, just to check in on academics and social stuff is really helpful. And making sure that the parent knows that the child will be able to get in contact with their case manager if they don't see them on a day-to-day basis. That's something that is easily put in an IEP if the committee decides that that's needed for the kiddo. If not, just having an informal meeting every once in a while to check in is useful as well. Even if your student doesn't see their case manager every day, that can still be their go-to person for social emotional things and academic things. Generally, I tell my students, you can come to me with any question and I may not know the answer, but I will know who we can talk to get the answer. So you always know to channel any unknowns to me, and that sort of helps feel safe in a new environment. And then knowing for the child, the student, to know where to find the case manager once school has started. So knowing where their classroom or their office is, because if it's not going to be on their schedule, then you can make a note of where they will be found, so the student will know where to go to get in contact with their case manager.
Good tips. So over the summer, some other things, after you've had a transition ARD, whether that's in person or over Zoom or some kind of video portal, you can start kind of preparing some more over the summer by either, if the school is open and there's actually some activities going on, you could try to register for those. So if there are any summer camps, any workshops, any events being held there, try to take your child there and then let them kind of get more familiar with the school, with the inside of the school. In the summer, also work on memorizing your student ID. You need it for everything in middle school and high school, so you might as well start now. It's their login for just about everything on any kind of computer platform. So you could have your child do that. One thing that sometimes throws some of our kids, because I know a lot of us have, our kiddos have fine motor delays sometimes, or is just working on having a lock. So even if your school does not have lockers, which many middle schools do not have them anymore, they still have a PE locker, and they may have a band locker if they're in band or something, some other activity. And so there are a few different kinds of locks. Some have like a combination with numbers, some can spell a word. And so some locks are different, and some work better for some kids than others. And so you may want to kind of experiment with that, see what works for your kid, and then practice using it so that they know what their code is or their word is, and then they really know how to open and close it. And then you have a copy of the password as well, or you can maybe give it to your case manager. So that's one tip we have over the summer. And then you can also, over the summer, again, look at the school website, kind of find out what the clubs and activities are, and start talking with your child about if they're going to join something. It's really, really a good idea to try to look for those kind of social opportunities over the summer as well.
And then once we move into August, whenever the school year is going to start, hopefully your child will get a chance to go to school, depending on what's happening in our world by that point, go to the school and tour and meet the case manager. Generally, there's some sort of back to school, meet the teacher type of program where you may not actually get to meet your child's teachers, but at least they can walk their schedule. Generally, at this point, you can identify at least one person who would be there to help out your student, whether that's an administrator or in the counseling office or an aide, just having one go-to person if you haven't made contact with the case manager yet. It is helpful whenever the child gets their schedule to be able to walk the schedule as it is. So if that means you have to, backtrack up and down the stairs a few times, whatever your student's day is going to look like, walk that day. And if you have the ability to, taking pictures of the teacher's doors, making notes about that sort of thing. It's a good opportunity also, if there's other students around, for them to at least have a few familiar faces of other students who will be around them, either in their homeroom advisory room, or just in the same grade as them. Whenever you are walking your kiddo's schedule, make sure that they know where to find their case manager, either if that's a classroom or an office. Wherever that spot is, even if it's not on their schedule, make a note of it somewhere that is accessible for the child. If your kiddo will need help with navigating the school, then it can help to have them do an audio recording of themselves walking their schedule, so they have to make some directional cues for themselves, and you guys can practice that before school starts, and they can listen to themselves and their own directional cues. And then as a family, you guys can make some notes as well. Anything that you think would be helpful for your kiddo. So the counseling office may be helpful, the nurse's office, how to get to the front office from where most of their classes are, those routes that they will take with frequency or without a doubt, they will end up making sure they know how to get there as well. And then above all, knowing where their safe spot is. So if wherever their cool down space is, if that's a classroom or if there's just one room in the school where any student goes, making sure that your kiddo knows above all else where their one safe place is.
All right, good tips. And so another thing you can do, once you've gotten to the point where you've been to back to school day or you've walked your schedule, you at least have your schedule. We made a mini schedule. There's a couple of versions you can do. You can either make a little pocket schedule, which would just be like maybe 3 inches by 3 inches that'll fit in your pocket. Or you can write your child's schedule, or they can do it themselves too. I mean, it's always good to have them do it if they want to, and if they like to do that kind of thing. Otherwise, you can do it so they can read it hopefully, and it's accurate. So write a little schedule on an index card, and then you can always double side, like get some clear packing tape, and then attach that tape each side, kind of like you're laminating it. Or if you have a laminator, of course, just laminate it. And then you can zip tie it to your child's binder. Or their backpack, whatever they're going to be carrying. Have a copy of their schedule with their room number on it that's visibly handy, like accessible. They don't have to dig and open their backpacks in the hallway. So either a pocket schedule or attached to something they're already carrying on the outside of it. And then on that little schedule, you can even write some little notes, like reminder notes, like if they have PE, like go to your locker, get your PE clothes, or if it's lunch, like get your lunch box before you walk to the cafeteria. So you can also add some little reminder notes on that as well, if that's going to be helpful. And then let's see. Also, you could consider making a social story about middle school basics and what's new and different. And so we'll put some resources on our website as well that people can access, but you can make a social story, like what to expect the first day and where are you going, what are you doing, what's the very first step, like mom's going to drop you off, you're walking in the main front doors, you're going to head straight to your autism teacher's classroom, or you're heading straight to your homeroom, like whatever the first day is. You could even really like write it out and write here's all the steps and here's what to expect. Things that are different. There's probably not assigned seating, so where are you going to sit? All of those things, like just cover that. And you can talk with your child's case manager, because the first day a lot of times is different than the rest of the week. Like sometimes they'll go to homeroom for half the day and then go to all their classes for 20 minutes, or so it doesn't always follow that regular schedule. So you do want to kind of find that out and prep your kid, especially if they don't like change or they're going to be surprised by a different schedule on the first day or the first week, whatever the scenario may be. But that's important to find out and discuss with your case manager. If you have a block schedule, this is kind of a tip for when school starts as well. A lot of middle schoolers use some big binders, these big, huge kind of trapper keeper binders, and then you put pocket folders in them for each subject. A lot of kids with executive functioning issues do well with 2 binders, so have 2 different color binders. If you have a block schedule, within each one will have like classes for one day, classes for the other day, because a lot of classes in middle school, they go to each class every other day. And so if you have 8 classes, you're actually only going to 4 classes a day for about an hour and a half each in quite a lot of schools. And if your school is one that does that, some kids use 2 different backpacks and some kids use 2 different binders, and then they're both fully stocked with supplies, pencils, paper, all the things that they need. And then also, of course, the folders. Sometimes kids will use a turn-in folder or a homework folder in each of those binders. So kind of look at like what works best for your child, and also what's the structure of your school, because this is going to kind of be different from school to school and what's going to work best. So that might be also something you work with your case manager on too, as to what's going to be the best option. And then if possible, just have your child bring lunch from home the first week. The cafeteria can be really, I don't know why, but every year we've been in high school and now in middle school, the cafeteria lines are insanely long at the beginning of the school year for like a week or 2. And it can just be very challenging, especially coming from 5th grade to 6th grade. It's kind of more like our middle school was more like a mall food court. And so there was like choices, and it was loud and crazy, and you can sit anywhere. And there are monitors there, but it's still very, very loud and pretty different from elementary school cafeterias. So definitely try to bring lunch from home if possible. If not, just learn how to buy and pay for lunch and have that set up, and review that with your child as well. And I think that's all I have. And Ms. Crow's going to review some social skills tips for the first day as well. So those are going to help a lot.
So speaking of lunch, whenever you're going through the school's website, if you happen to see a picture or video of the cafeteria, that's a good time to have your student look at it and figure out, where does everybody sit? What does it look like? What are you going to do if somebody cuts in front of you? What can you say? And then practice. How do you say that? Role play that with your student. As a middle school teacher, I promise you at some point someone is going to cut them in the lunch line, and it feels very intense in their middle school bodies. Along with the lunchroom, hallways are also really crowded, and they can be really disorganized. It's a very big adjustment from elementary straight lines to a passing period. So I suggest you and your student looking at video clips of middle school and high school students in hallways, in a TV show or a movie, and then talk about, what is that going to feel like? Chances are somebody's going to bump you. You can show them, this is what it might feel like when somebody bumps you. And talk through, does that mean that they're angry at you? If that's something that your child struggles with, that perception, making sure that they know the first day getting there, that might be a possibility, but it doesn't mean that somebody is out to get you, particularly because chances are that's going to be a high stress day for them anyway. Another one is in the PE, both the locker room and the PE gym, talking about all the unwritten social rules that happen there. So talking about the locker room and how do you get undressed? You know, should I end up standing there in my underwear, or should I take my t-shirt off and then put my t-shirt on, take my shorts off, put my shorts on? And what kind of things are appropriate to talk about there? If somebody does something you don't like, how are you going to handle that? Particularly if your child doesn't have direct instruction in those sort of complicated social interactions that are going to happen, talking about what that's going to look like and how they can handle it. You can also talk to them about how do you introduce yourself to adults and to peers in middle school, because that's going to look a little bit different. And role playing that as well. As you can tell, I'm a big proponent of role playing, all about role playing. For me, the most important thing is them being able to ask for permission to go to their safe spot, wherever that may be. So I make sure the first day that all of my students know how to ask permission to come to my classroom. And so making sure that they have the right verbiage and making sure that they know where it is. Because truth be told, in my opinion, they can forget everything else as long as they remember where their safe spot is and how to ask for it. Because once they can get there, then they can have that adult guidance to answer whatever struggles they may be having.
Yeah, definitely. And we didn't talk about this beforehand, but one thing I know in high school, there's a few kids with autism that, especially when they really don't like the hallways and they get a little overly freaked out or they're just claustrophobic, some of them are leaving like 5 minutes early before the bell rings and changing classes. So I don't know if that's an accommodation that middle schools do a lot, but I've definitely noticed there's a few kids in high school that do that. I don't know if it's going to be a huge problem, might be something parents could talk to their case managers about if you really foresee that being a huge issue. But it's a good skill to learn if you can navigate it and try it.
And Jackie, one thing that I found, sometimes students get self-conscious about the idea of leaving class early, and so they end up not doing it. And something that I found really effective is actually being one of the last people out of the room. So you're waiting until the hallways are more clear. So maybe waiting until the 1 minute bell before you start heading to your next class. So by then the hallways are a lot more clear and the locker rooms are more clear. And then you don't have to deal with the struggle of looking different by being the one to leave early. You just take a little bit longer to pack up your backpack. So that's also something.
That's a great point. That's a really good point. Yeah, because some kids in middle school, you'll find if you get accommodations, your kids don't want to use them. So then you do need to, that's a great point. So listen to your case managers because they know. Okay, good point. And then the other things we were going to talk about is that once school really starts, a lot of your kids are going to be in gen ed. So you'll be in a regular math class or gen ed math class, but you'll have an aide in there, or you'll have a sped co-teach model. But those teachers have tutoring. So just like for everybody, for the entire school, every core subject, math, English, social studies, all those core subjects have regular tutoring hours that your kids can go to. And a lot of times that's really helpful. And it's a very, very different model from elementary school because it just isn't really something that exists. But if your child is struggling in math, sometimes there may be a special ed math teacher at your school. And there may also be your child's gen ed math teacher. And a lot of times both of them have tutoring. And sometimes it's either before school, after school, during lunch. It could be during a homeroom if your school has a daily homeroom period. They may get a pass to go to tutoring. And so there's a lot of flexible time that your kids can get extra help. And sometimes tutoring's not that busy there. And so, sometimes there's 1 or 2 kids in there, and then you've got 30 minutes of undivided teacher time to just work on. And that's their specialty. And so that, accessing that tutoring is really helpful. And it's something that didn't occur to me. Certainly when I was in elementary, I didn't realize. It took me a little while to figure that out. So having the tutoring schedule is really good to know, and teachers usually will announce those like maybe a couple of weeks into the school year, or certainly by back to school parent night, then they'll all have their tutoring schedules. So that's something to keep in mind. The other thing, and it took me a little while to figure this out too, the online textbooks. We didn't realize there was online textbooks. And so for a semester, so you will want to find that out. Is the class, especially in core classes, nobody can afford the textbooks anymore. All these books are online. Usually your student will have access to it through their learning portal. and most of your core subjects are using a textbook. And so that's something you might want to find out. So if your child has worksheets and you don't know where to look for the material, or you can't find answers, do you have a real place to look for answers, and do you know how to access it? Possibly you and your child would probably be helpful if you're trying to help them access the information. And then some people request a set of textbooks as well, but and you may need that accommodation too, but just definitely know whether there is or isn't a textbook and how you can find it. Okay.
Also, often with online textbooks, there's a feature where it will read the text. And so if that oral accommodation helps your student, then that's definitely something to play around with and figure out and teach them how to do it.
Yes.
So generally, once school starts, your child is going to have some sort of homeroom advisory type of period every day. Generally, that sort of home-based teacher is going to be the one to explain how lunch is going to work. So they'll explain you're going to use your student ID to enter in to buy your lunch. Generally, most places post their lunch menu on their school website, so you could look at that before school starts as well to help your student figure out what days they want to eat lunch at school, or even just to sort of mentally prepare them, particularly if it's something that they aren't used to eating. And then if your student potentially will need help in the lunchroom, practice asking for that, either from the person that they're buying their food from or from just a lunch monitor. Practice asking for a variety of things so that they feel prepared. And then you can also practice asking for help in the hallway. If they get lost, how can they ask for help and who can they go to? And then whenever possible, work with your student on them sending emails to their case manager. So middle school is a really big time for fostering independence, which is a game changer for everybody. And depending on your student's ability level, you can co-write the email together. But it's really useful, one, to teach them how to be active sending an email and talk about why it's important. As adults, how do we use it in our everyday life? And that way they can start to self-advocate. And even if, you want to send a personal email adult to adult later on, that is a really important step in getting them prepared to independently ask for help whenever, in the moment when they really need it. And then I just want to remind everybody that with all of the craziness going on in the world, your teachers and case managers are trying really hard to keep up and understand what our responsibilities are. So make sure that you know that your case manager may not have all of the answers, but we're doing everything that we can do to make this transition as typical as it usually is. We know that this makes it even more anxiety inducing. And so we want to be here to support you and your student in that transition. Just know that we're all feeling this out.
Yeah. Definitely. Everyone's just doing the best they can right now with the information they have. And that is certainly how we're all operating. So we just want to say in closing, if you have questions, you can type them in the comment section of our Facebook post, and then we'll try to answer them as we go. Or we may get back to them later, but we will definitely see them. Don't forget, we have a number of resources on our website. We're going to put a lot of the middle school tips. We have a document kind of the things that we've discussed today. And then we'll have kind of a basic social story on the first day of school or the first week of school, and it'll be editable so that you can change it based on what your case manager tells you your school week will look like for your child. And then if you have a support or need help with anything autism related, we have information on referrals. We have an email and a phone number, and that's on our website as well. So we'll put that in the comments. And then lastly, we wanted to just remind everybody we have a brown bag learning lunch on April 9th, dealing with coronavirus and parenting and coping skills. And that's 12 to 1 on April the 9th. So we thank you guys for joining us. Thanks, Ms. Crow, for your insightful words of wisdom. So
Thanks for having me.
yeah, absolutely. And good luck, everyone. You can do this. All right. Thanks, guys. We're going to sign off. Goodbye.